Hi everyone and welcome to my channel and to this time-lapse version of a little duckling in soft pastel. I hope that you enjoy this here on YouTube. If you do, then please do hit that subscribe button. There will also be a full real-time tutorial coming from this over on my Patreon channel if you fancy working along with me on this little project. This, as you can see, is a pretty small little painting at just 8.5 inches by 7 inches. And I'm really enjoying making these mini demos for my patrons, as it also gives me a chance to work on something in the month that doesn't take me ages. So the idea with these is to work small, to take on less ambitious projects and give myself a little break from bigger paintings. And I think that does us all good sometimes, to work on something that can be done quicker and give us a finished outcome a little quicker, especially if you're used working in a very detailed and laborious style, as a lot of my work is. So working small has been a great revelation to me over the last couple of years, because I can create many little paintings in between all of my bigger projects. And I try to keep them relatively simple. That's why I chose this little duckling. Of course, it's really cute, but it's actually packed full of quite useful techniques. And it's the fuzzy edges of the duckling that really caught my attention in this one. But of course, we get a little bit of work on creating an out of focus background, how to create depth within the painting, even in a tiny painting like this. You can do so much with a background, even if it's quite a simple background. And I talk about that a lot throughout this process at the beginning of this painting, because you're not really tied to making it look exactly like the photo reference. That's the nice thing about these backgrounds. So you can play about with the colours a little bit. During this, I was deciding whether I wanted to go darker with the background or lighter, trying out colours, not necessarily knowing exactly what I want the background to look like from the start. My main aim with a good background is always to set off the main subject, so to complement the main subject. Out of focus is good for this duckling, because then we get all of these lovely edges around the duck, little soft edges. As you can see, I'm starting here with the pastel pencil. But it's also important to remember the overall solid shape of the duckling too. It's very easy to get carried away with creating soft, fluffy edges and perhaps not quite get the overall outline of the bird correct. So it's always something to keep an eye on as you're working, those bigger shapes. And again, I talk about that a lot throughout this project, where you start to hone in on smaller details, but then at some point it's good to step back, if only for a minute, just to look at it from a distance. But if I'm honest, a tea break is always good. So just to give yourself a break from looking at it, especially on the smaller paintings, because you're sitting quite close to a small painting as you're working on it. So it's good to take breaks, walk away, look at the painting from a distance. So a selection of lovely tones going into the little bird. Lovely warm tones on the head. But then we also get some of that warmth dotted throughout the rest of the bird as well. And then there's just a little hint of cool light. And we get that cool light on the top of the beak, which you can see I'm just starting to work on now. A little bit of cooler light coming down the back of the bird as well. And those are places where I can bring in some blue violet. And the blue violet is going to look so nice against the orange tones of the bird. So it's not one of my usual sunlit photo references. The lighting here is a little bit more flat. It was a bright but dull day. So grey skies above, not too much colour being reflected around. And certainly no serious divide between the light and shade. It's reasonably flat lighting. But within that, you can always find light and shade. So if you look at the front of the chest of the little duckling, here we start brightly up at the top of the chest. And as we come down in underneath the bird, that area of the same colour looks so much darker as we start to dip underneath the bird. So even when there's subtle lighting, there will be some direction in the lighting. You will get light and shade. It's often just a little bit more subtle than when something has direct sunshine on it. But that was kind of what I liked about this photo reference. The softness, the type of vibrance that you get from the colours on a dull day. This looks very familiar, this lighting coming from Ireland. And I photographed the little ducklings, I think somewhere in the Netherlands on my travels. They were waddling back towards a canal when I encountered them in the grass. And the photo that I took actually includes 3 little ducklings in a row. So my plan is to release the full photo reference to my patrons. And I'm kind of hoping that some of them will tackle the full image and work on the 3 little ducklings. Just for the purposes of a shorter mini demo, I decided to just crop one of the little ducklings and have a go. But the composition of the full reference is so sweet. So, as I often do with my tutorials, I will release the photo that I worked from, like you can see in the top left corner here. I'll release this to my patrons, but quite often I have a load of other photographs that go with this project. All usually images that could be painted with the help of the tutorial. But then at the same time, I like how it kind of encourages my students to have a go at their own image rather than just working along with the tutorial. It's like the next step to creating your own compositions from scratch, to have extra photo references that are royalty free, and then the guidance of a tutorial that shows you something very similar. So I will be releasing this as a real-time demo in the next couple of days over on my Patreon channel if you fancy working along with me. I have lots and lots of tutorials in my library there already, covering quite a wide variety of subject matter because I love to push myself and experiment. But animals are always something that I'm going to come back to. And while I haven't painted a duckling before, I have been loving painting birds this past year or two, which is a good thing because I seem to have an awful lot of bird photo references. I find it much more difficult to encounter the types of mammals that I love to paint. But birds, they have been photographed over the last few years. I never thought I would get round to painting so many bird references that I've taken. But this last year I've been really enjoying them. I've surprised myself just how much I've enjoyed painting birds recently. So that's another little bird done and in the library. I hope that you've enjoyed seeing it come together here in Timelapse. Do check out lots of my other playlists here on YouTube because not everything is in this time-lapse format. I do have some real-time tutorials here on YouTube. as well as lots of instructional videos about all sorts of things like colour theory, composition. So lots of videos to help you get started in soft pastel. But if you enjoyed this here on YouTube and you haven't already, please do hit that subscribe button. Thanks very much for watching, and until next time, happy pasteling.